Ahoy, mateys! 'Tis I, Captain Horatio Honeyflakes, and I be here to tell you about me newest crowdfunding campaign. The adventures continue with me crew, the Mighty Mascots, in issues 7, 8, and 9. Just focus your looking glass on the amazing artwork of Ian Warianto and Anton Bondi. Me crew, the Mighty Mascots, are up against some scurvy scallywags, and we need ye help to defeat them. There be a bounty of exclusive treasure, only available here, where X marks the spot. I spy a huge coffer of bonuses and stretch goals on the horizon. Then please consider pledging so we can continue these adventures with the weirdest crew I ever had the pleasure of sailing with. Mascots Unleashed!
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Indie Comics Relay. I'm your host, Keith Gleason, creator of the Mighty Mascots. With me, as always, Johnny C., creator of Surrounded by Death and Sartana. What's up, buddy?
What's up, man? How's it going?
Good, man. New night, new time, So
I know.
It's we've been
Like
talking about
revolving door of different time slots and times, and it's like people have to chase to find out when we're on.
Well,
we're just playing a little hard to get, Keith. That's all. It's a little hard to get. That's all.
I like that. Well, the good thing about YouTube is when you hit that bell for notification, you usually get an email or an alert when we're live. So
right,
and then that's always a good reason to play the countdown and some trailers, because it gives the people a few minutes to get in here and find you, all
to
that
jump
fun
in,
stuff,
yeah.
So,
but I mean, that doesn't prevent people from watching the replays either, right?
Of course, yeah. So and we do get play afterwards a lot,
Hey, we get play all the time, buddy.
Yeah. I and I also want to start focusing a little more on the short side of thing. I can't believe how crazy, did I tell you that I put a short on of me trying the new Peeps Pepsi.
Yeah.
And dude, within 2 days it had 1,000 views. I'm like,
unreal.
What the hell?
You just caught the wave at the right time.
I think so. I couldn't figure out why anyone would care about that, but you know what I mean? It's just people so care, wild. Man.
Hey, soda's very important to people. I get that.
Yeah, I underestimated
other people's soda.
Yeah, right. Did you try the Peeps Pepsi?
I did actually. I did actually end up trying it. I couldn't really put my finger on I was kind of in the same boat as you. It was too sweet, so I didn't really enjoy it. If I was younger, I would have loved this stuff. But it was a little too sweet, very vanilla-y. It tasted like Peeps without that sugary Peeps flavor. So there was a little bit of a hint of a marshmallow on there. Yeah. And the other thing that it triggered for me in my taste buds is that I don't know if you remember when Coke put out that space cola. It was like Starlight or something it was called.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And that kind of had a weird s'mores flavor to it with a hint of marshmallow.
Yeah.
I got that same hint of marshmallow from that cola as I did in the Peeps cola. So it was I can definitely tell there was some synergy in the formula. And there's definitely a indication of marshmallow in there. There was a little bit of artificial marshmallow flavor for sure.
Yep. It tasted it was leaning more towards vanilla Coke or something for me, but that marshmallow was there too. Yeah, you could taste it. I'm gonna do a taste test of that new Rosalie. There's a new Rosalie Coke or something. It's one of those artist series, they did a marshmallow. Yeah, a creator series Coke. I bought one, but I haven't filmed it yet, but I'll do that as a short and see if
I should do that more often. I just don't have the patience to set up a camera and to do
yeah, right. That's why I got Amy's perfect. She can film it. I don't have to edit anything, and I just make sure it's under a minute and it's done.
Yeah.
So we'll try it. You know, I'll try it. See if I can hit but lightning in a bottle again. You know,
I always look forward to the Keith reviews because I trust your judgment.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I think we have kind of the same taste buds a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah, definitely.
So it's like, if Keith likes it, then I think I'd like it. If he doesn't, and sure enough, even with the peeps, like I saw your video, and then I actually ended up with the opportunities. Like the very next day, coincidentally, my coworker brought some in.
Oh, really?
I was like, what a happy accident this is. So, I tried it, and sure enough, I was like, okay, I'm kind of in the same boat as Keith here. It's just not my good, but not my thing.
Yeah, definitely. I actually ended up dumping it, the rest of it, because I didn't like it that, enough to finish it. So
we have some left over at work as well. But the other thing that kind of occurred to me is that I bet you would make good for, and I know you don't drink too much, but in certain mixed drinks, I think that might be a good like base.
Yeah. Definitely. I could see that working in a mixed drink easily. Yeah. Definitely. So, so our impromptu night, we were talking about doing 8:30 for a long time. So that's one thing that is different, and then we're also now talking about possibly going to a Monday, but we schedule so far out that the earliest we could actually go to Monday is probably going to be in May sometime, May or June, so.
You know what it is, Keith? I think we had 2 weeks of Mondays, and then those shoes are starting to feel comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. It is, Johnny. It's like you get recharged from having the weekend off from work, and then Monday you still have that, like, you still get, recharged from the weekend, that you have that burst of energy,
I don't want to say that it was the show that did it, the Monday show that did it, but the last 2 weeks I've been the most productive when it comes to like projects I need to do, like check off my list. Like since we've been doing the last 2 or however long, how many weeks it's been for the Monday shows.
Yeah.
I've gotten my hot sauce label done.
Oh,
and I'm 15 pages into the script I'm supposed to be writing.
Oh,
so
wow.
it's like something about that Monday. I don't know. Maybe if it's just like this kicks things into gear for me.
Oh,
whereas
maybe.
like if it's midweek, like when we were doing Wednesdays, I felt like it was like, okay, I break momentum to do the show, and then it's tough to get back into the groove again.
Oh, interesting.
You know what I mean? I mean, I can't say that's for sure, except for the fact that we've had Monday shows and I've been productive.
Yeah.
More so than I have been in a while.
I felt it
Go
too.
figure.
Like I felt like it's a great way to start the week too. Like you finish it and you're done, And what I would probably do is if we go to Monday, so just to let everybody know that's watching, that watches the channel regularly. So normally we do a Tuesday or Wednesday show live stream, and then I'll upload an ICR bit on Friday. And then on Sundays, I usually upload a comic review or, a mascot video, whatever.
Sure.
So if we go to Mondays with the live stream, I think my schedule for uploads will turn into Monday, Wednesday, Friday now, instead of having something drop on the weekend.
That's probably smarter too, because when you put it out, it'll hopefully catch over the weekend. You know what I mean?
Right. And then if we don't have a live stream on Monday, it'll just be a new video, instead.
Right.
So yeah. So I'm kind of digging that vibe, but the thing is that I didn't feel like going back and rescheduling all those shows we already booked. So we'll probably for at least a couple months be on Tuesdays at 8:30.
Stick with Tuesdays. And who knows, we might find in a couple of shows we're like, oh, maybe we'll stick with Tuesdays. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Although I don't know, I'm with you. I kind of felt something on Monday and we had the same audience. So maybe, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Something's off tonight.
Things by ear.
Yeah. Something's off tonight though. Like it looks like Facebook is not connected for some reason.
Oh, that's strange.
And I don't know why that is.
I hope we don't lose Harry because I know he's a Facebook guy.
Yeah, let me
Harry, come to YouTube.
I want to showing on Facebook, but maybe just not
mild technical difficulty. Not a big deal.
Yeah, I don't know what's. Yeah, most of the people watch us on YouTube, anyways. But we do We do pick up people on Facebook, and they watch for a little bit. but I'm just trying to see if there's anything I can. I don't think I can do anything without stopping the show. And
we don't want to do that now.
Yeah, I don't want to do that either right now, because that could turn into some problems. But
but
we're
sure.
on. I've been experimenting with the other link, going back and forth with Twitch and Twitter. So I'm gonna see, if we notice a difference in the amount of people with those two. So
yeah, I feel like Twitch as a community is growing too. So there's a lot of people who kind of hang around on Twitch, and if they happen to be scrolling and they see our handsome faces, then you never know.
Stop. We're talking to some cool comics, and they can learn about it. You never know.
Some cool creators or whatever. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, definitely. So before we bring tonight's guest in, always just got to check the campaign.
Yes,
we've it's been kind of stilted the last few months. I'm so close to 8
just
grand.
shy of 8K.
Yeah. But I think as soon as I get the figures, we'll get there. So
I feel like that there's the figures could put you over to the point where you need to be or where you'd want to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
That's definitely the gap closer for you.
I think so. And then if we can get to 10, we'll get those. We'll get the tattoos as well.
Oh, I can't wait for the temporary tattoos.
But we'll see. I'm thinking about even like I even when I'm done this campaign, maybe I'll keep it open as sort of like an online store until Indiegogo closes me out.
Sure.
I think they said they leave it up. You have to have activity. Or if you go without activity for like 6 months, then they
close you down,
shut it down. But there's I don't know if there's a limit, like how long it'll actually go. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, why not? So check it out if you guys haven't. The link is always in the description of the video, and check it out. So for what was I going to say? The progress, issue 9 is almost done with the pencils and inks. And
nice.
Issues 7 and 8 are pretty much in the can, although we're going back and tweaking things. Like I often like tweak the shit right up until we send it to printing, So
yeah.
And so that's going on right now. Amy's doing a lot of background artwork for the books, like adding in like cityscapes and things like that, which is really nice.
A lot of that creative process too is like, you always would be creating. Like if somebody didn't put George Lucas in check, he'd still be making special editions of the original trilogy, right? And I feel like exactly as a creator, like you can't help but want to go back and retread on some of the old content. Putting stuff in the drawer and kind of putting it behind you is really hard sometimes. I experienced that, and I see other creators that go through that too.
Oh yeah. I feel like I stop once it's printed, but after that, I feel it's like, you're done,
Right.
We'll see. But Harry's with us. Hey, he said, "What's up, peeps?"
Harry, peeps.
That's awesome. So I'm not familiar with tonight's guest. Now that's somebody you found, right?
So tonight's guest, Jordan. He had like kind of an open call he does a show on his own where he has 2 comic creators review a third comic, I believe. Okay. And I submitted to be on that, and I we'll hopefully get to that at some point. But I was like, in the meantime, I go, hey, well, I do a show with my good friend Keith. Come on our show. So that's kind of how it opened up. So so the other thing too is that he has a really cool comic that his cover kind of really caught my eye. It's a beautiful watercolor cover.
Oh yeah.
So that was one of the things that kind of like hooked me on wanting to bring him in and find out a little bit more about him as a creator.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I looked through the PDF that he sent, the comic. It looks amazing. Like, it looks like he's been making comics right along for a long time, It was that good looking. So,
well, can't wait to find out a little bit more about him,
Yeah, definitely. So I guess without further ado, we're already 15 minutes in. So let's bring in tonight's guest, Mr. Jordan Patrick Finn. Thank you for joining us, Jordan. How's it going?
Hello. My audio's all good?
Yeah, you sound great.
Great.
It's going good. I'm having a good time. I'm happy to be invited onto the show. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for taking the time.
We always like learning about new creators, and especially indie creators, you know, since that's what the show is the focus on. The one thing we always start with, like with our guests, is we love to learn how you kind of made the transition, or what made you make the transition from being a fan of like comics or movies or whatever to actually wanting to make comics. And like, was there a comic or movie or show or cartoon in your past that kind of set you on this path to becoming a creator that you can point to?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a specific story. I'd say generally I've been creative for a long time. Long before I was into comics, I was making music. I was in
Cool.
like local bands and things of that nature. I've sort of been interested in game design for a long time, although like I don't pursue that heavily. It's just sort of stuff that I'm constantly thinking about creating stuff. And my brother and I were still are deeply into comics. Were at the time deeply into Marvel comics specifically, and we were
Was there
reading
a
like
specific title that you guys were hooked on, or?
um right when this was really bubbling up to the surface of like wanting to make comics would be around like 2010 or 11, I think,
Okay.
ish. So around that time was like Fraction and Aha's Hawkeye series.
Hawkeye, yeah.
There was Gillen's Young Avengers series.
Mm.
Brubaker and then Bendis on Daredevil were huge for me.
That was good stuff.
A bunch of stuff, but the biggest thing for me was Inhumans, which I almost never hear from anybody. There's nobody who loves Inhumans.
Is that the Paul
I do.
Jenkins,
No, honestly, I do though. I do enjoy the Inhumans.
The Jay Lee one?
That one. Yeah, I don't think they had one going at the time, but I really loved like the Jenkins and Lee one, and I especially loved Silent War by Fraser Irving and David Hine, which was maybe I think it was like around like House of M-ish, like 2005 or 6 or something. Yeah. But I picked it up at the store on a whim because Black Bolt was cool, and I loved Silent War. I got so deep into Inhumans. And me and my brother just were reading everything, and we talked about like, oh, what would you do with this character? What would you do with X character? How would you write this? Like, do you have a 6-issue series for this character? Like, we just kept like throwing ideas and experimenting and stuff.
That's awesome.
And then eventually, I was like, I just have to write it, right? I have to write something. And that's what all the advice or whatever that I was looking up, all the pros, like how do you get started? How do you get into comics? And obviously you don't start by sending Marvel your pitch for Inhumans or whatever, right? It's like, just make a comic that you want to make. So also at the same time, I was getting very deeply into Lovecraft. I was reading all of his Cthulhu mythos, all the Lovecraft shorts. And just that was just wheeling through my brain. And I was like, I'll make a Lovecraft comic. So I did. And that was my first book, was Hellcraft, which was like a Lovecraftian black and white detective fiction book. We started, I found an artist online because I didn't know any artists and I'm not talented in that regard on my own, and just did like a short 10-pager just to see if I could make a comic, and it worked. And I was hoping like that someone else, maybe my brother, since I was talking to him, or one of my friends might do like their own 10-page, and then we could do like a double feature horror comic or whatever. But nobody really got into that.
Those,
so I just like
jam comics. Did you ever do one of those where you like, I'm going to do the first 2 pages and then I'm going to hand it off to you and you continue the story?
I have not, but I would love to. That would be so much fun.
It was.
That's honestly why I love making comics, and why I loved my other creative pursuits before that, especially like music and stuff, is that it's collaborative. I love helping other people with their stories and having people like come in and help with my stories. That's the biggest joy for me. That's why comics like really hits a deep itch for me, is that collaboration is so much fun.
The vibe, the synergy you get when you're like bouncing ideas off somebody, it's like a drug though. You know what I mean? It's just like,
which was exactly that thing with my brother. Me and him would just like throw a ball back and forth in our living room playing catch and just like bouncing ideas for like hours. And then
it's like, what if Wolverine did this? Or
Black
Bolt, you know?
I was just gonna say, is like I always feel like a lot of writers start with like fanfic or, you know, kind of in that realm, only in the sense that it's comfortable because you're not writing your own thing, right? So like you can make all the mistakes you want in fanfic. It really doesn't matter, but it's also help molding you as a writer in and of itself. And then when you kind of get to the point, it's like, oh, well, I have an original idea. And then you can start building and expanding upon that. It's like, and you get that momentum too. It's like, it's almost like a intoxicating thrust into the creative process, you know?
Or it's like if you're not doing fanfic, you're doing that thing where your character is exactly Wolverine but a different name.
You know, what Image did in the 90s, you mean?
Yes. What's that? What'd you say?
What Image did in the 90s?
Yeah. But you can always see, like, when someone does that, like, it's so obvious that, like, they're ripping something off, like, you know, like a little kid does, like
off in that image case for a lot of them. Like how many versions of Cable really did I see?
Yeah, right. How many pouches? How many characters?
I always feel like Prophet was just Cable recolored a little bit. You know.
Yeah, that's true. Man, that's great though. I mean, I feel like that's how a lot of indie creators start, and then they find the indie community, and it's exactly that. You know, you get a few bad apples, like with any kind of group or whatever, but like most of all, like, I mean, I met
Keith froze.
Okay, good. That wasn't me. I thought I was lost. Oh no.
That's okay. He'll boomerang back at some point. Not a big deal.
I'll follow up on what he was just cut out saying, which was that like creators start off with that and then get into indie scene or whatever. And that's sort of where I'm at now, is like Marvel and like Inhumans and X-Men, whatever, is like way off my radar at this point. Like I have no idea what's happening in Marvel anymore, but I still have that passion for comics as the medium instead.
Sure, yeah. I mean, because I think it's just because the big two is primarily superheroes, capes, and masks.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like by default, you kind of have to, or you kind of like gravitate towards that as a first love. But it's like even me, like I jumped on board with superhero books, but my comic is slice of life with zombies. You know what I mean? It's just one of the things. Oh, we lost Keith. That's gone. Okay. I don't know if I can even let him back in. So hopefully he'll know what to do there. But
he'll come back as a zombie then. It's very topical to your story.
I know, right? He's risen like Christ 3 days later.
Yeah. Well, it's not April yet, but or Easter yet.
Right. But don't worry, we can carry this. We got this, my man.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, it's funny how like I think that's the evolution too, because even like me personally, it's like when you read comics, you first get kind of introduced to the superhero stuff, and then as you get along, you get like, oh well, here is Keith, welcome back. Oh God! Oh, we thought we were gonna have to carry this on our own.
Oh, good, perfect. Like I thought, like I bounced out or something. Like and the whole show, my computer just rebooted randomly for some reason.
Oh yeah.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead. What were you guys talking about?
Well, I was just kind of saying it's like it's when we all kind of start with superhero books is what I was saying. When we, start reading and getting introduced to comics, and then it's like you start to discover like more deeper things like, Watchmen or Preacher. For me specifically, it was Watchmen, V for Vendetta, and Preacher, like picking up these other titles that were not quite superhero that kind of helped expand my tastes and knowledge of comics.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Topic. You got me thinking now, like what got me into like indie? What were the first things?
Well, what broke your superhero grasp, I guess?
It was probably like Sex Criminals, because that was around that time too.
That's a great one. I love that book.
That was pretty good stuff.
And it was weird to see,
I don't know what else
speaking of that book for a second, like it was weird to see Chip Zdarsky go from writing funny comics to writing some of the best superhero stuff right now. Like his Batman's incredible right now. So good.
Batman? I did not know that. I thought he was like on like Daredevil or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was doing he's still doing Daredevil too, I think. That's one I missed. I wish
sorry.
I want to go back.
Well, actually,
sorry, John Sadonsky. I don't know which books you're on right now.
Isn't David Prepos on Daredevil right now? Indie darling David Prepos?
I know he's doing
I don't know, maybe I could be wrong
stuff,
there.
But no, I think Daredevil is still being Chip Zdarsky, I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Good for
But
him.
anyways, I think with moving to indie stuff, I'm trying to remember what my first indie book was. I think it might have been like Dark Horse's Aliens or something like that, like the original one,
Which is so funny because it's like that's an indie comic for sure, but not a brand. Like that brand is so mainstream. Yeah. It's not even funny. But the comics that went along with that brand, those Dark Horse books definitely had that indie vibe.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Still just a huge IP.
Yeah, I think if you go to anything in Image too, right? Because you got to think of Image kind of as like indie now, and
yeah, sure.
So
just huge, just massive.
Massive the Walking Dead will say otherwise, right?
Yeah, true. I mean, that was like what a top 10 book or whatever. But it's still indie, if you think about it.
If you think about it, if you want to put a label on it, I guess it is a more indie series than what the big two. But
I love Image books for sure. Don't get me wrong. I didn't mean
to
sass on Image. I love them. They're great.
Yeah. Descender, that book's the shit.
Like I feel like not to get off on a tangent here, but I also feel like Boom Studios and Dark Horse are kind of stepping it up a lot lately too. I feel like they're putting out some great stuff.
Dark Horse was one of the first indie comic publishers that were starting to transfer their IPs to film, like
yeah, that's right,
Mask and Hellboy and all sorts of stuff like that. So I feel like they had a good root in transmedia. What I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I agree. So Jordan,
we're way off topic though. We went such a tangent.
So I know we were talking about collaborating with people and things like that.
Yes,
and so when was the first comic you did was Hellcraft, and that was around.
That was probably around 2012, I would guess. 2013, maybe the first one, which was just like I said, it was a 10-pager, and that is like gone. That was like so bad. I don't even think I could find it anymore. If somebody else could find it, I would be like stunned, and I would ask them to please delete that shit forever.
Can you give a quick pitch on what the story was?
It was basically Shadow over Innsmouth, just like retold with like different kinds of fish monsters, and with the main character of the series is a detective called Hank Hellcraft. And like everything, they're all sort of Lovecraft retellings, but focused on one character and sort of exploring his motivations and character traits. So the first one was very rough, and then we did 3 more 20-page issues, and then I took like years off because it just wasn't feasible at all financially. I was like spending so much money. I wasn't selling anything. I'm still not selling anything. Yeah, I'm sure in indie comics we all know it's all just a labor of love. But at the time I was like, I did 3, like I tried it, whatever, it's fine. And then like years later, some of my friends were like, dude, you have to do one, you have to finish. What the hell happens next? Because 3 ended on like kind of a cliffhanger. So then I wrote a double-sized 4th issue, 40-page 4th issue, brought the whole package to Kickstarter because people were telling me, oh, you can Kickstart a comic, you might find an audience, maybe that'll help like cover some of the expense for you. And it did. I think I raised like $5,000 on that first campaign that I did.
Wow, man.
It didn't cover everything, but it did help me a lot and realize, this is financially feasible. And I had, I don't know, over 100, maybe 200 backers or something. And I was like, there's an audience now. Like before that, I was selling like my 3 issues. I was selling to like the 10 people that I knew that would read comics. Yeah. And then it's like, strangers will like buy this off Kickstarter. Okay, sure. So
right.
It kind of becomes like crowdfunding kind of becomes like an online store in a lot of ways, like, and it's, you got that small window to buy it, and sure.
I think most of my sales on like my next book, Death Kanji, I think predominantly my sales were from the Kickstarter campaign itself.
Well, that's why it's great about it, because you can build on the previous campaigns, and your campaigns start getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think those crowdsourcing platforms are basically your go-to source for indie books. Yeah. It's not like a lot of comic stores, stock it, and you can only go and find new stuff on social media to a certain extent, but when you have this nice concentrated platform where people are trying to put their projects together, it's a great. I liken it to me as a teenager going into, and if you're in the Northeast here, Newbury Comics, which is like an indie record store where you go and you get your new indie music. Same thing for comics, as you go to these crowdsourcing platforms to find and discover this new content, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's great stuff. So going back to like when you were first making your first comic, did you ever do any conventions or anything?
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
Back then, no. That's been a recent development. That's like a basically post-COVID situation for me.
Oh, okay. Did you what part of the country are you in?
I am not in your country.
Oh,
I'm a neighbor to the north.
Oh, no kidding! I didn't know that.
I'm nearby Toronto, Canada.
Oh, okay.
Right on. That's awesome.
They have a couple good shows there, I think. Right?
Yeah. What's the show that you do up in that area?
The big one I would say is TCAF.
Okay, yeah, I've heard
Toronto
of that.
Comic
I think
Art.
Lori was talking about that the previous show. Sorry, Jordan, didn't mean to step on you there.
All good.
I think that show came up in a previous episode recently.
Yeah, TCAF rules. TCAF is
yeah, we heard a lot of good things about it.
Yeah. Fan Expo is huge too, but I feel like that's more about movies and television than it is necessarily about comics.
We have one right here in our backyard too, and I have not been to it.
It's
just for that reason. What'd you say, Johnny?
It stinks. I don't like it.
That's what I hear.
I miss the old Boston Comic Con, which is now Wicked Comic Con.
Yeah. I look at Fan Expo and I go, I'm going to lose my shirt there if I do that show, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think up in Canada, it's different too. I think was that not a kind of a homegrown show in that regard? Like it was built from the ground up in that area?
Which one, TCAF or Fan Expo?
Fan Expo.
Fan Expo? I don't really know any of the history on that.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I think that was one that were like, it wasn't like in our situation where they bought Boston Comic Con and became Fan Expo Boston, whereas over there, I think they grew the show. And there's kind of a different vibe when you have that, you know.
I think that could be true. Yeah.
Yeah, when you used to go into so Boston Comic Con, the people who ran that show were very indie centric. The main vein hallway of the show, when you walked into the trade center back in the day, was all indie books, all indie creators, right down the middle, which is great. They really put everybody, all the indie creators, at the forefront. When Fan Expo came in, they moved them all off to an artist alley off to the side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like talk about getting marginalized, but I think that's the difference.
Rug.
Right. And I think that's a little bit of the difference there that you see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wanted one of these days get up to a show in Canada. Have you ever been, Johnny? Have you ever?
I haven't. I'd really love to go up that way sometime.
You guys should make it out for TCAF then. I think it's usually in May. I think last year it might have been pushed to June just because COVID is all weird. But if you want like an indie comics show specifically that sort of ignores the TV stuff, like go to TCAF. That is the show.
Nice.
How is
where
admission's free? It's at the Toronto Reference Library.
Oh wow!
Okay.
It's this giant like 4-story library
that does puts tables on every floor and stuff like that.
It does. Yep.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
That's awesome. How's the comic community up in Toronto? Is it huge? Is it?
I think it's pretty big. I feel a little bit disconnected from the Toronto scene exactly. I feel more tuned in and connected to like the Twitter scene. There seems to be like a very specific group of indie comics Twitter creators that I'm very like in touch with and communicate with a lot.
Nothing wrong with that. I think there's a great community on Twitter, you know.
Oh, I love it.
Everywhere too. Like Facebook, you can find a good one, and you know,
it's
finding your tribe, I guess, you know.
Yeah, well, I feel like I found a lot of people in person with all the shows I've went to, but that kind of migrated to Twitter in the sense that I stayed in touch more with them there than, you know, I met them first, but I stay more in touch with them there than anywhere.
There's been a little bit of a flip for that, is that people that I've interacted with and become friends or fans of on Twitter, I find out, oh, you're actually like from the Toronto area.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm like, oh, you're actually like a local. Oh, we'll meet up sometime.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. There's something about just actually meeting and shaking the hands of the people you collaborate with is a real great feeling. You know what I mean? Not to discount that you can't work online and remotely and things like that. And, you know, there's collaborators I have overseas, but, you know, meeting that person in person is great.
The artist that I randomly found online, Greg Woronchak, to do that first Hellcraft book with, I had no idea where he's from. I just I liked his art. I sent him an email. I got his page rate. I sent him my ideas. He liked it. I was happy to pay him. So we worked on Hellcraft, and we kept going and kept going. And then I brought him back to do Def Kanji because we worked so well together. And I find out he lives in Ottawa.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Which actually for the Hellcraft campaign, I think that's when I found that out and was like, oh, you're like right there. Like, so I just drove out and met him and like signed a bunch of books together to email out or mail out to our backers.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Really cool. I was going to ask, did you end up actually meeting in person?
Yeah, absolutely. I drove out there. I did it a second time with Death Kanji, but that was like that was 2020, like serious COVID. So I just like dropped the books like on his doorstep. Like came back a couple hours later to get them.
Awesome.
But yeah, it was amazing to like meet the person that you've been interacting with. Like for years we've been working together, and then I was like, oh, you're like, let's meet, let's have coffee, let's go to a Tim Hortons, you know.
Yeah. I always have this like thought in the back of my head. So my colorist is in Moldova, so he's all the way across the other end of the globe.
Way far.
Way far. So it was like, if he came up to me at a show like to ever introduce himself, I wouldn't even recognize him. I wouldn't, you know what I mean? I know him as like a icon, like a social media icon. That's about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's funny. What was I gonna say? That it's the Hellcraft stuff. There's a guy we had a couple, like maybe a month or so ago on the show, or maybe a couple months now, who's in our neck of the woods. He does a noir cop thing with Cthulhu and Lovecraft. And I think it was called like Lovecraft PI. Are you familiar with? Have you seen that guy's stuff?
I am not, but I'll check out that previous episode of your show to figure
out
who he is.
His name
is
Dave
doing. Yeah.
Kahn. He does a lot of stuff with the Lovecraft universe.
Yeah,
like he had a campaign for something to do with Reanimator, and I backed that, and I got the book. It looks pretty good. I haven't read it yet, but I got it in the mail the other day. So,
nice.
I think
he's a nice guy.
A huge pile of books that we've had delivered that we haven't cracked.
Like if I could flip my camera around right now, there's like a mountain right around the corner over here of indie books. Actually, as a matter of fact, like stack right here. I mean,
oh my god,
my house is littered with Gemini mailers.
Well, you back like a fiend, Johnny. You back.
I do. Well, I like to support indie books, and I like reading indie books, and I also like kind of like having a barometer of seeing what people are writing nowadays in the indie scene. You know what I mean? It's very easy as a creator, I feel like, to get kind of like tunnel vision and to put on your blinders and to do your own thing and to keep, pressing forward. But like, you got to consume not only the major media stuff, but what your peers are doing and what, the surrounding indie creators are doing.
That. You always
know what I mean? You really got to keep your finger on the pulse.
Yeah, definitely. And you always start to see like certain trends emerge. Like it seemed like a year or so ago, everyone in the indie scene was kind of making wrestling comics a little bit, did you notice that, Jordan?
Yeah. Too? I saw a good bunch of wrestling stuff come out around the same time. Yeah.
And I don't
know about you guys, but I am not into wrestling like at all. And I kept seeing it.
I used to be. Johnny is. I kind of ended in the 90s though, you know?
Yeah.
I was a fan during the 2000 Stone Cold era. I was dormant up until recently, and I've caught the Hulkamania once again.
You're back in.
I'm back in, unfortunately, but I actually enjoy it.
Well, there's no shame, and like I don't mean to make fun of people who are into it, but I'm like, guys, like,
not at all.
There's so much more than wrestling.
Well, no, I agree with you. It's so easy, much like comics. It's so easy to geek out on because it's storytelling, right? It's storytelling with a little bit of physicality. So, some mofos read comics, and, some people watch wrestling, some people watch golf.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I feel comics and wrestling have such a like shared, I guess, fandom. Like there's so many commonalities between the two.
Yes.
I've often made
platforms
that too,
to mediums, I guess I would call it.
If you think about the way the storylines work in wrestling, they're very comic book. Like it's a villain and a hero, and then they settle the differences in the ring. So much like
and it's
superhero
episodic,
book.
And nobody dies. Yes. Everybody comes back a season later.
Yeah, and everything like kind of
resets.
I can see. So
there's quarterly resets at these pay-per-views that they do, right? So it's like that's your Secret Wars, so to speak. So there's
your
like 4
event.
Secret Wars a year.
WrestleMania was like the big like like Secret Wars or Crisis of Infinite Earths or something. You know,
it's funny. I remember when I first started going, I'm going to be a creative spirit here and start writing stuff. I was unemployed. I remember being home in the middle of the day washing dishes. And I normally would watch the news, and right after the news, soap operas would be on right in the middle of the day. So, my hands are all soapy as I'm washing dishes. And then I would come to realize as I'm watching, the soap opera, I'm like, oh my God, this is comic storytelling. The way they would do it, and just the way they would have character interactions and story threads that were kind of going and starting at each episode. And I was like, oh my God, this is comics. This is just like, in the same way wrestling is the same thing. It's just prolonged storytelling,
Oh, yeah. It's interesting.
Storytelling is just like universal.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like whether it's TV shows or whatever.
Cartoons and stuff.
Cartoons.
Yeah.
No,
even commercials, like commercials that have continuity. It's the same business. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, definitely. So to get back to your comics though, like, so you did the first campaign, and then when was the first campaign? Back in like
2018, I think.
Oh, okay.
Like I said, I did the first 3 issues like pretty quickly, like 2012, 13, 14 or something, and then took a few years off before like coming back in. I think 2018 was the Hellcraft Kickstarter.
Gotcha. And then that was a graphic novel that you did?
Yeah, that was like a collection of not the crappy 10-page thing, but the 320 pages and the 40, so a total like 100-page.
Oh wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I mean, I find, like I said earlier, crowdfunding, I think it helps you find that audience, wherever it may be, and you're selling it to an actual person, which is even better. So that like it's going to a reader and not going, just to sit on a shelf somewhere.
And it's so exciting to be like, oh, this person from this random country wants to
read my book.
And I was so inexperienced, I put all my shipping rates like really weird. I still like put my shipping rates really, really low, but back then they were like super low. So I guess usually on Kickstarter, people from foreign countries like get completely shafted.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys have the same experience, but a lot of the indie creators that I'm around, especially US creators, I feel like jack up international shipping rates like super, super high.
Yeah,
I didn't do that. So I had a bunch of international backers back that first Hellcraft book from all these like weird ass different countries. And it was so exciting to be like, I'm sending my books all across the world.
Yeah,
it was like amazing feeling to be like, oh, this person in this country wants it, this person in this country. Oh, it's
incredible. A weird feeling, like
it was pretty cool to get a pledge from Cairo.
Yeah, like somebody's reading Mighty Mascots in Bucharest, like, like
it's too good, too funny,
it's great. But yeah, no, I hear you about the shipping, and I'm starting to see like more of the international people buying digital now.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Well, shipping is getting worse the last couple of years.
It's awful.
Skyrocketed. Man. It's so hard to ship internationally now.
I've noticed that like digital's the tier for creators to support other creators, because you know at this point it's as easy as sending an email and not having to like pack a Gemini mailer. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like
kind of doing.
I want to support this guy, but I don't want to give him any hassle. I'll just buy digital. You know what I mean?
Yep. The digital reward tier, and pledge an extra couple bucks if you can.
Yeah, exactly.
that's the move.
Yeah, that is totally the move.
Yeah. Unless you really want to have the print. Sometimes I do that too. Depends on the book, that kind of thing.
I love to, but I mean, like I said, I'm in Canada, so a lot of US people launching their campaigns will be like $50 to ship to Canada. I'm like, that.
You're like, what the?
All right, digital. Let's go digital.
That's why you got to fox with that media mail.
Yeah.
Although wait, can you go to Canada with media mail? I'm not too sure.
I don't think so. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. It might be only a US.
I don't think I've ever
I'm
tried to ship media mail outside of the country.
Media mail is basically anything flat that's literature, but does not contain advertising. So a lot of people in the US will ship through media mail because then it's the lowest price possible. It's like $3 or $4. It's
almost like a little bit more than like first class or something, but like the problem with it is like they don't consider comics as part of media mail. So you take a risk when you ship media mail because they do go through the packages sometimes, you know. And I haven't had it. I had it happen once, and that was like a nightmare. But
Keith, the trick is you got to sweet talk the mailman at the post office, right?
Yeah.
You just gotta, connect with them on some personal level, and that's
what I tried to do.
Your eyes are so blue or something. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much. The one I went to, I got like the person that has been to working there for way too long and just wants to like stick it to the customer, you know. You got that guy, you know. So
yeah.
But and then so after you finished Hellcraft, then Death Kanji came right after that. Is that the next
it came a few years. I did a couple short comics first just to like get better at telling succinct stories through comics with different artists and just getting more experience. And then my next long form book was Death Kanji.
Now go ahead, Johnny.
I was just gonna say, so in Death Kanji, I mean, you really have this beautiful, compelling cover that's done in watercolor.
Yes.
Was that a proactive decision, or is that something where your artist typically works in watercolor?
That was a different artist, and I'll tell you the story on that. That was
Please.
Oh yeah,
I brought it up so we can.
There we go. Look how beautiful. No, but seriously, guys, look at that cover. It's gorgeous. Like, are you kidding me? Like,
so happy that I splurged on this cover.
Oh, it's beautiful, dude.
So
it's beautiful.
But I love when you can see the canvas on the background too.
The deal with that was that Death Kanji was already being made. I had already sent Greg Woronchak the script. I think I had already got my letterer and colorist on board. We were all working, all moving together. And I wasn't sure about what I wanted to do for the cover yet. I was just like, after the book's done, like I'll figure out a cover, whatever. And then I picked up Fearscape by Vault Comics.
Okay.
Randomly when I went to the local comic shop, I got a recommendation from the guy that works there. He's like, "Oh, you'll probably like this Fearscape book. It's kind of literary, kind of like horror adjacent. You'll be into it." And I read it, and it was pretty good. I really liked it. But at the end was the alternate cover gallery, and there were these beautiful watercolor covers by this artist that was just labeled Christantina.
Okay.
And I was like, I want one of those. Those look so good. And the charm of being in comics is that you can just do that. You can just, if you see an artist that you like, you could just hire that artist.
Yeah.
If you
got the money, I found out who Christantina was, and it's a cover artist. I think she's from, I want to say like Indonesia, somewhere Southeast Asia for sure. Ariella Christantina, sent her an email, told her about the book, asked her rates, got her on board, told her like I wanted something like Fearscape. She was like, "Oh yeah, great! Like I loved working on those. I'll do something similar to that." And that's where this came from.
That's amazing. It also looks besides the beautiful watercolor image, it looks like you would see this on a scroll or something in Japan.
Yeah.
Like when you see those in the movies when they're talking about their histories or the myths. They always pull out the scrolls and it has these beautiful drawings on them. That's what this looks like to me.
I've heard some reviewers reference like woodblock art, Japanese woodblock art.
When
they look at not the cover specifically, but the interior art, they're like, "Oh, I could see this as being influenced by that style," which I do see. I'm not the artist, so I don't know how intentional it was, but I like to think that it was.
Dr. Mass says, "Very nice, not your usual cover." Yeah, I agree.
It's eye-catching for sure. Like that's what you want as people are walking by your table.
That's exactly that's the book on my table that catches people's eyes.
Oh, yeah, man.
It helps that I submit that for an award for a Canadian independent comic magazine called Sequential Magazine.
Okay.
I submit that for an award for best graphic novel of the year. It was released, and I won.
Oh, congrats, man! That's awesome.
They sent me a little plaque in the mail, so on my convention table, I have all my books. I have Death Kanji sitting there with the little plaque that says best graphic novel. So people immediately are drawn to this cover because it's gorgeous, and then they're drawn to the shiny gold plaque beside, and they're like, "Oh, that's awesome. Oh, it's good. Okay,
it's
sure,
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked through it at work today, and the artwork. I mean, I can't wait to like have a minute to sit down and read this whole thing, Jordan, and just check it out. But like,
I hope
just
you enjoy
looking
it.
at even your interiors are really
beautiful,
good. You know, like
yeah.
Well, everybody on the team, Greg Woronchak, the colorist was AHG, and the letterer was a friend of mine, Lyndon Radchenka, and I think all three of them were just like did such good work.
So, and the concept is it seems like it's feudal Japan meets Lovecraft. Is that correct?
It's Lovecraft Samurai. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Great.
So could you give maybe like an elevator pitch on the project for people who might not be familiar?
Sure. I feel like I should have something real short and succinct and good to sell prepared, but I don't. But the short of it would be that it's a story about a samurai searching for hidden family knowledge that turns out to be dangerous. In that very Lovecraftian way of knowledge is not always a good thing when you gain it and attain it, and it can drive people to madness or horrible actions, which I allude to right at the start. I sort of get that out of the way as like, hey, here's the bad shit that is going to happen. I hope that you're on board for the explaining how we get to this point.
Nice,
this is good stuff. Really, really nice looking.
I get some Samurai Jack vibes. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I do love that.
Not from me, maybe from the art, but
right.
I was okay with Samurai Jack, but I was never like deep into it. I haven't seen like
right.
the whole thing or gotten way into it.
Or even like Ronin has that vibe too.
Ronin, yeah, I was just gonna say that there's some Ronin vibes here as well.
Yeah, this is really nice. Just scrolling through the colorist kind of capture
for your audience. It's very graphic right here.
Oh yes,
graphic. Maybe a bit much for YouTube. I don't know.
Well, every story needs to kill Bambi's mother at one point. So
yeah.
Essentially, there are very specific reasons for violence. It's not violence for violence's sake. I want there to be.
Well, I mean, it seems too like we mentioned Ronin, we mentioned Samurai Jack, and the thing those have in common is like it's a samurai against a demon of some sort, and you're kind of carrying on that tradition, which is good,
That is the similar vibe, and I did that right on the pages where you just skimmed through the tiger that starts the story. I went with a very specific route of people not understanding things in the universe, right? Where I introduce the idea that there is a demon in the forest that they are hunting, and then they track it down, and they're like, one of them is like, "Oh, that's a tiger." Oh, like people who don't know what that is think that's a demon, and that sort of plays into the rest of the story where there is like more what we would think of as supernatural creatures, but I'm trying to reflect that that's just a lack of understanding, which again is a very Lovecraftian theme of just like we just don't know the stuff that's in the universe. That doesn't mean that it's like magical, but it means that it's beyond our comprehension,
touching the unknown and the consequences as a result of it.
100, you got it.
100%.
You got it.
I was going to ask, in terms of like setting a story with samurais, what was your research process like? I mean, did you find yourself kind of doing a lot of deep dives just so you had accuracy, or did you kind of not worry about that?
No, I did try very, very hard to be as accurate as possible. I would say it ended up being samurai because I was binging as many Kurosawa flicks as I could at the time when the idea came to me, and I was like, oh, Lovecraft, Kurosawa, all right, cram them together. But then I did feel like there was a responsibility, and I asked my artist about this. I was like, we're two like Canadian white guys. Can we do like a feudal Japan thing without being like assholes about it? So a lot of it was me going to my library and getting like Japanese history books and trying to make sure everything was accurate, and sending Greg like very specific links of being like, this is what this thing would look like, this is how like this thing would be performed, please like use it as correctly as we can. Nice. So it was a process.
Nice.
I like to think I did it justice. I hope that I did, honestly.
It looks great. It looks awesome.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward
the
to
final
reading
product definitely looks great. That's the tough thing too, especially when you're working with an artist. And I always try to like leave a lot of creative liberty and freedom for the artist to do what they want to do there. But like that accuracy is tough because when you want something specific or you need something to be so specific, it's like, you got to hit the nail on the head. You really got to hammer the point home. It's absolutely
a balancing act between like giving an artist freedom. And I try to do that like so much. Me and Greg have this really good working relationship because we've done it so much. And I totally trust him that he's a great visual storyteller. So I can be like, we work Marvel method a lot where I'm like, these are the things that needs to happen on this page. Here's the dialogue of the page, and he'll pace out the panels based on like what my dialogue was in mind. But yeah, there are definitely, like I said, balancing act. There are those moments where you have to have something very specific. And you're like, this is exactly the thing that needs to be included. I want to give you as much freedom as you can, but on this page, it has to be like this. So
I've always found
it's a hard
those
balance.
moments. Yeah, those moments are like very, very much. It seemed like a chore for an artist, unless they genuinely enjoy the subject at hand. It's like having to detail something specific to their someone else's terms is always a chore.
Some do. I've worked with artists that prefer that too. Where I always have that conversation up front with an artist. I'm like, how do you want me to give you a script? Like, what's the exact way that like is easiest for you to work on a script? And some are like, outline exactly everything. I want to know everything on every panel. And I'm like, okay, I'm surprised that you want that, but if you do, I'm happy to oblige for you.
Yeah. There's some people that love the freedom of breaking down a script, and there's other people that just want to come in, draw your outline, and like I've had to draw like thumbnails out for artists and stuff. So yeah, I have that conversation a lot up front as well. So
I did that a lot on Sartana. It was because primarily because I was pulling and basing from a pre-existing character from some old movies. So I would find myself pulling screenshots, going, I want it to look like this, or I want it to be, this kind of style, or he's moving, he would be moving like this,
Yeah, I love that. That's great. I think Death Kanji looks really cool. Now, when did you put that Kickstarter together? Was that more recent?
That was 2020 that was Kickstarter.
Okay.
Like right in the height of COVID. I think like right the weekend that COVID launched was when I really started like putting it together, right in that March like time when everything shut down.
Me too, actually. I was doing my campaign about a month into COVID, and I was like, did you feel like I at the time it felt like I can't believe I shouldn't be doing this. Like it felt like you were, because COVID was so uncertain at that time.
I felt that way too, but I felt like there was no chance of it still being a problem when I was done.
Well, the thing was, looking back, it was the best time to do it because there was not a lot going on at that time.
Everyone was at home.
Everyone was at home, and people were spending on campaigns.
And at least for here, the Canadian government like covered a lot of people's lack of income. For a lot of people who lost their jobs or couldn't go to work because everything was shut down, people had still at least some source of income.
Yeah.
So people were okay with buying stuff.
Yeah, stimulus is too, right? I mean, the U.S. we were getting like these fat paychecks, and people were like, "Oh, I'm going to go buy this. I'm going to go buy that." I feel like money was flowing a little bit more freely, and then all of a sudden we start getting this like massive inflation, and I feel like you could kind of see a little bit of that dip in like Comic-Con sales and Kickstarter, receipts and things like that.
Yeah, it had to eventually balance itself out, right? So,
right, exactly.
Yeah. And we're kind of seeing that now, the balance part,
Now, in Death Kanji, is it a standalone book, or is this like the first volume of?
Yeah, no, it's just a standalone 82-page graphic novel.
Okay.
Or graphic novella.
Beginning,
if you really wanted to be real pinkies in the air about it.
Yeah, right.
So then, what's next? What's the next project you have on your plate?
Ooh, tough question. I'm working on a lot of short stuff right now.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I put out a short anthology with a bunch of my friends as well. I probably have a monster book that I can't talk about coming out this year. I think I have a book coming out this year. I very much hope so.
Nice.
But the next long form thing I have been, I know the next long form thing, but I cannot crack the story. I know so much about the book and what it's about and very specific pages of it, but I don't have the whole thing figured out. So I'm hesitant to like really start sharing too much of it. But I do have a long form book coming soon. Like I know what it is. It's just a matter of like getting it cranked out.
Sure. No, I know exactly that kind of feeling where it's like, you have all the chess pieces, but it's like putting it together and laying out the board's tough.
Yeah.
I completely feel you on that.
I'm doing that right now with with a project too. So I get that.
It is an exciting phase to be in, where like
it is.
Oh, these pieces are good. I know there's some good shit in here. Oh, I can't wait to put it all together and have it turn out hopefully half as good as I intend it to be.
Yeah. Well, it
And
always looks better up here.
It
right,
always does.
first.
You have to accept that. You have to accept it won't be quite the same, but hopefully it's still good.
Totally. Now, are you like pretty much pacing yourself where it's like one major project a year, or how would you say that you kind of like what's your creative schedule like? I guess
I would like to pace myself quicker than that, but 7.5 months ago I had a baby, my first child.
Oh, congrats, man.
So that put everything sort of on halt, basically, where I can still sort of contribute to short stuff, and I can still sort of do some editing for some friends of mine, but that's really what's halting me from actually like finishing the next long form thing until I've really got the baby situation kind of under control. So that's my pace. My pacing issues are family related, I guess.
Sure.
Gotcha.
In a good way, not like a family disaster kind of thing. Like
that's a good thing though. You're just kind of finding your balance, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of tough. You don't let go of the creative freedom of putting out your content, but you also you're building your family, you're doing your thing.
Yeah, I try
life
to spend
and family.
a lot of time with that. Yeah, that's very, 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 very important.
And you just find your times of the day that you can write, or put something together. I'm
starting to get that balance now. In the last like 2 to 3 months, I've really sort of started to figure out like which times are good for creative times and which times I can. So hopefully soon. I'm really striking the balance lately. Yeah.
Do you find yourself like working late into the evening because you also have to kind of wake up for the baby, or
I find myself doing nothing really late into the evening for no reason. It's like, I could go to bed and then I just like sit on the couch and do like nothing for like 3 hours, and I'm like, well, now like I'm gonna be exhausted tomorrow, but I don't know why I did this to myself. I just wanted to be awake and experience some peaceful vibes for just like 2 hours maybe.
Yeah. There's something zen like about late night, just kind of isolation and just kind of like vegging out in front of the TV or something or whatever the case may be.
I've always been like a night owl kind of guy. It's just like 3 a.m. There's something about that time that just like no other time really hits.
Yeah. It's I think it's also there's so much less distraction and worry at that hour in most regards. Is that like
everything feels almost quiet?
It feels quiet, right? Like the atmosphere that you're in, just like there's just like a peaceful vibe over everything. Everybody's just asleep. Nobody's rushing anywhere. Everything is cool. Everything is calm and quiet.
Yeah. I get that.
You're kind of on your own time. I almost feel like it's one of those zen moments. Like I always say that I always get like inspiration for creativity like in the shower or like doing dishes and things like that, and I think just the peacefulness of the late night hours is the equivalent of that zen like moment of like just kind of cutting everything else out and allowing your brain to process thoughts and ideas and concept pages, scenarios, things of that nature.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally agree with you.
Yeah.
It helps you get into like that. I talked about that a while ago about like that trance like state. Mm-hmm. Like I saw a hypnotist years ago, and they talked about how that's how you tap into ideas is when you get into that like state, like the way when you watch a good movie and it goes by like that, it's they contribute that to being kind of in a trance,
right for
stuff
sure.
like that. So but this is great. I mean, and I wanted to ask you, so Johnny was saying that you do a podcast as well.
I was just going to pivot to that. Yep.
Yeah. I do. I host a podcast that came probably about a year ago, I think, where the inspiration on that was just listening to basically the A24 podcast, or like varieties like Actors on Actors or Directors on Directors, which I prefer, where it's just like they sit down two people in their creative field and just have them talk to each other about specific projects. So I don't have to deal with listening to like the same host asking the same questions, because you get that way a lot with like a lot of like podcast interviews, where it's you get into the flow and it can feel comfortable, but I like the spontaneity of like two people like going at each other.
Yeah.
So I was like, why doesn't that exist for comics? And then I got to thinking, no one else is going to make that. All right, shit, I'll just do it.
What's the name of the show?
It's called Creators on Comics.
Creators on Comics.
Yeah, I really wanted like that kind of name, like, but I didn't want like creators on creators, because like, what the hell is that? Like, is it like a gods interviewing each other?
It's a very niche part of the porn store, right?
So yeah, I put on Creators on Comics as the title for that, and I feel a few months down the line, I got affiliated with Platform Comics, so it's on like a Platform Comics like network.
Oh, cool.
Some other podcasts might be coming soon to join me on there, but for now, I think I'm the only one.
Okay. Yeah, no, like I feel like I definitely hear what you're saying about having like you go on shows and they have like this interviewer saying the same questions, and we tend to do that a little bit here, but like I feel like having the co-host with Johnny, and then like the guests, we always end up in different areas and tangents, and
I think for sure having two hosts like adds a whole different element to that for sure.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And I feel like
if somebody happens to dip out because of bad internet connections, you just carry the show. Not a problem at all.
Shots fired.
I feel attacked.
Don't worry, Keith. I got your back always.
That's awesome.
So how long have you been doing the show, you said?
I think it's been about a year. I feel like I did the last one around like February or March. I mean, the first one last year, February or March, I think was the first episode. And we did take a few months off, like with the baby situation. I've really been sort of struggling to schedule episodes, because it's way harder to manage the schedule when it's like between two like completely disconnected
that must
people.
Be tough, like trying to get them. Hey, can you? And then if someone can't line up, then you got to go back and forth a little bit, you know.
And I'm trying to get international creators too, which makes time zone things like a whole different thing. Tough, so it is difficult to manage, but I am back now after, I feel like September to like February was like a gap or something like that. October to February, maybe. I did one episode a couple weeks ago. I will be doing more. When I first started it, I launched it like an episode a week. That's going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And then like a month later, I was like, every second week, well, that's going to be perfect. And now I'm like, one a month would be like great if I could do one a month.
Yeah. Like when we started, I was like that too. Like, let's maybe do once a week.
Yeah.
And Johnny was like, it's probably more realistic to do once every other week. And I was like, okay. And we were at the time, we were like, no one's going to want to do this show. Like, we were just like,
we were worried. Yeah.
We were asking friends from the convention scene and things like that. But then about really quick, like maybe about 2 months in, Johnny, or 3 months in, the show started sustaining itself. And I don't think we've ever had a lull, you know, where we had trouble getting guests, because
there are so many people in indie comics that just desperately want to talk about their work.
Yeah, well, and there's nowhere really
and writers talk, man. Let me tell you.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, you get the two kinds, right? You get the people that are really introverted that can't really talk well about their comics, and then you have the, you know, like me and Johnny, you got diarrhea of the mouth, you know.
Yeah,
so like
you can't shut us up.
Just keep going.
That's why it's like good cop and bad cop with me and Keith. You know, it's like
that's why we get along so well. You know? So.
Who can, you know, if they're introverted, who can pull the words out of them? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's definitely true. How many episodes have you done, Jordan, of the show?
It's under 20. It might be like 20? 16.
That's still
maybe
a good run, though.
Yeah. Any notable creators that you can highlight or say that you have on the show?
Well, if I name anybody, I'll feel really mean for not naming other people.
You're so considerate.
My second to latest episode was my first letterers episode, because I am trying to field not just writers. I want artists. I did a letterers. I would love to have more different fields represented. But my letterers episode was a friend of mine, DC Hopkins, who does a lot of like big work, is a Ringo nominee.
I've heard that name.
As
I've heard of DC. Yeah.
DC Hopkins. He's done tons of stuff. And Darren Bennett and both of them work together at World Studios.
Okay.
And for the Ringos, I tried to get like a lot of Ringo nominees, and it all sort of fell through. Like I said, my scheduling stuff, it's probably all on my fault and no one else's, but I couldn't put together schedules and episodes in time. But I wanted to promote people like when the Ringo nominations were up to try to get some votes going, try to get some interest going.
Sure.
So DC Hopkins on his own was nominated, and World Design Studios was nominated.
Oh,
and
wow,
cool.
DC's a friend of mine, so I was like, "Hey, DC, do you want to do the show?" And with one of your other coworkers at World, and then it's sort of just like sharing the love between these two guys who work together, and they were both like congratulating each other on their nominations, and also like, well, if the studio wins, then we both win, but if you win, then you win on your own. So like either way, it's all good. And they were like, I really like to find creators when I can who have a relationship before the show. There's a charm of like putting two people who don't know each other at all and introducing them together, but I feel like the best episodes are two people who have a relationship already and come into the show like as friends, and then they can talk about fun friend anecdotes, and it makes for better episodes in my mind. So I feel like that one was a highlight.
How does your show work? Do you like moderate it and then the two creators come in? Is that the gist?
Yeah, I just I sit in the chat with them because I hit record and I take notes on stuff that I need to edit out. But I don't speak at all during the episode.
Gotcha. Is it a live stream like this?
No, it's recorded, and I spend a lot of time editing it, probably too much time editing it.
Oh, gotcha.
Which is another reason why I can't keep up with like a good regular schedule, is because I spend like hours. I spend like 4 hours editing like 1 hour of like content.
I hear that, man. That's part of the
I forgot what I was saying. Well,
no, you're saying like I was saying about how you moderate it and then you kind of listen in, and
I'll be on the episode just for 30 seconds at the start and 30 seconds at the end, just where I say, these are the two people on the episode. This is this person's book. This is this person's book. That's it. And then at the end, I'm like, this is where you can buy this book. This is the website where you can buy this book. Thank you for listening. That's it.
So you just have them talk about craft and that kind of thing. Do you guide it at all, or do you just let them go?
Before I start the recording process, I'll sort of tell them what I'm after, the kind of content that we're trying to go for. But even before then, I'm emailing back and forth with them and trying to focus things on like one book specifically. I'm like, you pick one book of yours that you want to talk about. You pick one book of yours that you want to talk about. Send them to each other, read them, and then ask pointed questions about how this book was made, the process behind it, the thought that went into specific panels, or like, why did you make this choice? How did you hire this person? How did blah, blah, blah. Like deep questions on how specific books were made, not just like, how do you make comics? It's like, how did you make this comic is really kind of what I'm trying to go for.
Gotcha.
With that show.
That's like the real meat and like potatoes of it all too. You know, it's like you said, it's not like just the superfluous, what inspired you or whatever. It's more of just like,
that's good stuff too. And I love when they talk about inspirations on the show as well.
Right. Yeah. But there's something in the fine detail that is way more interesting, especially coming from somebody who's a creator and kind of seeing the deep dive into their craft. I also kind of find that some creators are like, they like to keep things close to the vest. So even like they don't really talk about their processes or maybe like their rituals when it comes down to writing or creating or doing whatever, you know what I mean? And I think some of that might be just because it's also a personal process. Yeah. And, given that they may be an introverted creator, it's tougher to share. Right?
I think most of us are. I think most of us creating comics are all sort of very insular. Generally.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. Definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
There's so many demands for us to break out of our shells. And it sort of cracks. Like, I'm a deeply introverted person, but I like to think or hope that it's not showing when I do shows like this.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think like you have to be in this day and age as a creator, no one's going to do it for you,
Yeah, exactly. Well, and when you table, you have to talk to dozens or hundreds of people every weekend or whatever, right? So I think to break that shell.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. I was going to say, I think that's exactly what it is. That when I found myself forcing myself to table and go to a lot of shows, you're having to put yourself out there, and it's, you can see the difference between being in a show, not putting yourself out there, and and then the shows where you actually make a proactive effort to put books in hands, and you can see the dollar value difference. So it's like you have to go out there, you have to do that, you have to break that insular shell, like you said.
Sadly, I wish I didn't have to.
Yeah, I know. Most people
just get some extroverted marketing dude to just sit at my table for me all day.
Yeah, right.
I have time to write.
You need a hype man.
Yeah, hype man. Yeah. Johnny, I couldn't picture you not ever being like a positive presence at a convention or anything like that. Like, were you in the early days? Were you more quiet, or?
I'm thinking more, I guess, just pre-creator. I was very kind of to myself and introverted in that regard, and I would listen more than I would speak. I feel like I'm in a phase of my life now where I speak more than I listen.
I think when you're in those positions, you kind of have to, because you kind of the people that come to your table are wanting to hear what you have to say, about your
I don't know. I feel like the opposite. A lot of people who come to my table just want to tell me something.
I get that. Yeah, you get that too. You get that a lot too.
I feel like I want to. When people come to the table, I feel like if I'm not talking and steering the conversation, it's just going to veer into the dumb questions like, "Did you draw this?" Or just the
I'm used to that question.
The questions that you just eye roll. No, I'm just the writer.
Just the writer. I'm trying to cut that from my vocabulary. That's always my answer, and I'm like, I shouldn't. That's not a good answer. I need to cut that out.
Yeah, it feels like not. It feels like you're not confident about your book or whatever. When you say
it projects that, I think.
It does.
I also think it doesn't. That comes from the natural, instinctual kind of imposter syndrome that comes with being a creator. Is that you're oh, I'm just the writer. It's
I do think it's true. I'll stand by it that I do believe the artist does a lot more work than the writer does in a comic.
Yes.
Oh, big time.
Hands down.
Yeah. So
I tend to answer
that's
that
why
question.
That comes from for me. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was saying I tend to answer that question because I letter my own stuff too. So I tend to answer that oh, I do everything but the art. I always say that to them, so.
I did letter my own work for the first 3 issues of Hellcraft, and then I decided I was really terrible at it and I wanted a professional to do it instead.
Did you come to the conclusion, or did you get open critique from somebody?
No, honestly, I came to the conclusion on my own. Nobody was really real rude about my bad lettering. They probably should have been.
Well, that's the funny thing too. People are so supportive in indie comics, which is great, but I also feel like they're just kind of patronizing you a little bit. You know what I mean?
And it wasn't horrible. I did a lot of research and study on how to letter properly, so I did follow all the rules. I did do an okay-ish job, right? But it's not the same as having a pro.
Right. Yeah, people. I feel like with bad lettering, people won't just say anything to you. They'll just not read the book again, which kind of a bad thing,
Well, it's one of those components of comics that somebody who doesn't make comics doesn't even really think about. You know what I mean?
No,
it's so underrated and understood. How would you say
Big time.
Misunderstood, maybe?
Misunderstood. No, I don't think it's understood incorrectly. It's just a lack of awareness, I think, of that.
That's probably a better way.
It's it's like with what an editor does for a movie, right? So you never you only see
want it to be invisible.
Yes,
if you see the editing, it's bad editing.
Exactly.
Generally, there are exceptions, obviously, but
people in the know how important that is.
And
same thing with lettering.
Same take on lettering, right? If the lettering's invisible, if you're not noticing it, it's really good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If it doesn't occur to you, then it's good because it just kind of flows with everything else.
And again, there are exceptions. I know that's general, but there can be times where you want the lettering specifically to be what is noticed. There are reasons for that too.
Right.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's been books I've looked at and wow, the lettering is so awesome in this book, or something. You just notice it, and you don't know if it was intentional or if it was, whatever, but yeah, it's an art form, definitely.
Oh, for sure.
All right, well, I'm gonna start wrapping up. We're about 120 into the show, so like
time flew by, honestly.
Time really did fly by on this one.
They get right into it, and it starts to blend in. Let me share your website here one more time, so that
I was just gonna say. In the meantime, while he's bringing that up, Jordan, do you have like comic convention appearances coming up, or anything you can promote?
Damn, I do, but I don't remember them. I have two. I only do like local stuff. To me, I don't like go anywhere out of province or out of country, so it's just local. I feel like I did an Oshawa one last week. I feel like the next one might be like Barrie, Ontario, which is like an hour north of Toronto. Yeah, sorry, I don't have specific. No worries. I have a couple. They're in the back of my mind somewhere. I have a paper like underneath some boxes that I'm like, I know in April I'm going to dig those up and know exactly the dates and the times that I need to be places.
Yep. I'm kind of the same way in that regard. It's like I don't think about what I have coming up in the future until I'm like 3 weeks out. And I'm like, okay. Yep. I got to start thinking about this, ordering books, whatever.
Exactly.
You write it on the calendar and just let it go. Yeah, Dr. Mask is asking how much is shipping to the US.
I think my shipping rate is $10 Canadian for a book to the US, which is like about $7.50 US dollars to ship.
Does that come up on the website when you order it? Like,
that should. If you go to my website, jordanpatrickfinn.com, it'll take you to the web store, and you can add books to your cart, and the shipping will be applied when you apply your country.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. I just gotta come up there and meet you, get a book in person. That's all I gotta do.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into that.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into. Those are the kind of shows I love too. Like those indie.
You find so much
shows.
Good stuff. You discover like so many cool new talents.
And shows the key word there also was free entrance for attendees. Like
free
when there's free entrance for attendees, they will spend that money on the content.
Exactly.
Is that like a 2-day show, 1 day?
Geez, I don't remember. I think 3-day. I think it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I bet you the Sunday of that show is killer. It's the last day of the show. People are spending cash.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I usually go on Saturdays, but the Sunday probably the last day is probably like everybody buys stuff. I would
That's kind of what the trend is at C2E2 in Chicago. It's
everybody waits till the last day and then it's here's all my money.
Exactly. Right? They don't want to carry it around.
I don't want to carry these books for 2 days. So
right. Exactly.
Awesome. So all right. Yeah. So we'll share the website. Anything else that you want to mention, Jordan? Like where people can grab your podcast?
Sure. If you just look up Creators on Comics, whichever podcasting platform, they should be on every single one of them. I know for sure that they're on Spotify and Apple, but they should be on all the other ones if people use other ones. Creators on Comics. You can find me on Twitter at Jordan P. Finn. That's the only social media that I'm really active on. You could find me if you dug on me for other places, but I don't post anywhere except Twitter.
Gotcha.
And Jordan Patrick Finn is too long for Twitter, so it's Jordan P. Finn.
Jordan P. Finn. All right. Yeah. Perfect.
Cool.
All right. Johnny, anything you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, I was supposed to be at Northeast Comic Con this weekend for the voiceover work I did on the real Miyagi panel.
Okay.
So that's happening this weekend, but I won't be there in attendance. My next show is C2E2 at the end of the month.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And beyond that, today on Global Comics, I released the Surrounded by Death epilogue short that you lettered, Keith.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, so that's out there. It's not for free. Only the first 2 pages or so are for free, but that's available out there now for people to read.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Check that out. That's a great little story.
Yeah, it was a fun one.
Really good epilogue. It's funny. It's a nice side story, that adds to the characters and everything. It's really fun.
Yep,
so I recommend that as well. That was a fun one to letter too.
Yeah, you did a great job on that, Keith. Thank you.
Thanks, man. For me, after you check out Jordan's work, if you have any money left over, check out Mighty Mascots on Indiegogo, still live. That's about it on my end too. Not much else just being promoting right now,
And just a big thank you to you, Jordan, for taking the time to come on the show. I know time is kind of precious for us creators, so for you to carve out a slice of your evening, we greatly appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, thank you both for inviting me. I really feel honored and appreciate being here talking with you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe we'll see you at TCAF one of these days.
I hope so.
All right. Awesome. All right, everybody. We're gonna wrap this up. So Tuesdays going forward for now until like May and June.
Then we might
move
back to
Monday. But 8:30, I think, is going to be the start time from now on. So,
which I like. I like that we're wrapping up right around 10 o'clock now.
Yeah,
great time.
Instead of like close to midnight.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. So, all right. Well, everyone, have a great week. Read some comics, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks. All right, later, everybody. Bye.